So a very good evening and warm welcome back to our webinar series, Meeting an Expert, the platform where you get to know people and their talents and of course your future potential opportunities. So we have a wonderful character today as always, and before starting off for the day, we have our chairman, Mr. Bandula Egodage, who would like to of course express his wishes while welcoming all of you. So let's listen to him first. Chairman, over to you.
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Kaushali. As usual, on behalf of our CEO, Roshani Godegi, our staff, and our student population, and also the board of directors, very warmly welcome you for this session, Dr. Venkatesh. We are privileged to have you here in spite of your busy schedule and also your committed time that you always you are committed with the students. So this is nothing new. But anyway, we are privileged to have you for the benefit of our students. Whole objective is this session or all the series that we want to give our students for a direct contact and interaction with people like you, like opinion leaders in Sri Lanka or out. So therefore, we are privileged once again to have you here. And Doctor, as you all know, that AIT has been here in Sri Lanka for over 2 decades, and also known as for a quality education. Our intention is to give our students not only the academic excellence, but also to have a all well-rounded experience, and we want them to be future leaders, and we want to inculcate leadership qualities within. And end of the day, after they leave AIT, we want to be fully comprehensive personality for the society, which all are looking for. In fact, Doctor, your topic basically talking about why third wave learning. The COVID gave us a very valid experience and seriously a new dimension to the entire world. So our living standards, our consumer expectation and the behaviors, everything has changed dramatically and drastically. So you are talking about in the third wave and also in a proactive manner. So this is the need of the hour. So I think that you have selected the right topic. So person like you, like with your 25 years experience and also in a right caliber, we are once again happy to be with you all this 1 hour. So once again, making that arrangement, I would like to thank on behalf of AIT for Dr. Rohanta and conducting this for the Kaushali and for your great presence, Doctor. So without further ado, I would like to hand over this one to Dr. Rohanta and Kaushali to go ahead with the program. Thank you very much, Doctor, once again. Thank you very much, Dr. Venkatesh.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Rohanta.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and let me introduce the speaker today. He's no stranger to Sri Lanka. The banking community has a lot of respect in Sri Lanka for Dr. Venkatesh. He's the Director, Professional Masters Program, School of Management at the Asian Institute of Technology, the premier education university in the whole of Asia. They call it the University of the United Nations. And Dr. Sundar Venkatesh is an experienced educator, known for his innovative approaches to pedagogy. His area of interest is particularly on the learning needs and approaches of mature and experienced audience. In a career spanning 25 years, he has trained and taught in education institutions and corporates across the globe. He has had privilege to support the learning and development initiatives of many large Sri Lankan organizations. Dr. Venkatesh is a chartered accountant with degrees in physics and law. He obtained his PhD from the prestigious Indian Institute of Management, IIM, in Ahmedabad. He's a member of the Institute of Directors in Thailand. Currently, he is Director of Professional Masters Programs at the School of Management, Asian Institute of Technology, where he also serves as a member of the faculty. Dr. Venkatesh has worked in audit, consulting, and manufacturing. He also heads a boutique startup, Connect ED, learning and development, which specializes in executive learning and development. He has published 4 books, numerous articles in peer-reviewed international journals, and I'm actually privileged to invite Dr. Venkatesh, who happens to be my teacher on the doctorate program, a fantastic human being, a brilliant in depth, and he's a very good friend of Sri Lanka. Dr. Venkatesh, over to you.
Thank you very much, Rohanta, for those kind words and introduction. Now, what I will do is make my talk shorter and take questions from the audience, in a way that will explore the topic of this third wave a little deeper. So since we are a small compact group, I think the discussion and dialogue format will serve us well. So very briefly, let me tell you a bit about myself, in addition to what Rohanta mentioned. Now, I have had a career that spans audit, manufacturing, consulting, and academia. And through all of this, I have focused on the needs of people at work. So very often, education, especially in the subcontinent, but also in many parts of Asia, is focused more on the degree and the prestige that goes with it. But it's not necessary that all of this education prepares us well for a career in organizations. So when I joined academia, of course, I was teaching students in the classroom who are undergoing the degree program. But I also had a lot of opportunities to teach executives in companies. And through this, I got a tremendous amount of insight, if you like, of the link between academia and organizations. A very telling example one time I had was, when the CEO, local CEO of a large multinational in India once told me that the graduates from your institute are very, very good. Now, first we have to recruit them, and then they have to unlearn what they have learned, and then we teach them what is useful for work in our organization. Now, I said, why do you bother to recruit at all from our campus if you have to train them all over again? He said, oh, the academic institutions do a good job of selecting good people. They have very good entrance exams and filtering system. So you have done part of the job for us. But thereafter, what goes on in the classroom, it's not readily usable in the workplace. And so, there was a little bit of disappointment, if you like, in hearing that, in getting to know that what you were teaching in the classroom was not exactly what was required in organizations. Now, this experience with the industry, so to speak, I have, had this opportunity to work with organizations across the globe. I have trained across in companies in many countries, and notably in Sri Lanka. I have had the opportunity to train managers in many organizations in Sri Lanka. And some of the same story repeats itself, that organizations spend a tremendous amount of time and money and energy in getting people work ready, so to speak, and keeping them work ready. Right? So I say this about myself because what I'm going to say next is not supported by any data and so on. So of course, I could have tried to collect some data to support all of this, but my views that follow are purely experiential, and the trend that I see is what I see from where I sit, based on my experience and based on my proximity to organizations. as a trend that is unfolding. Now, here is the broad trend, and in each of these 6 boxes, you can plug in numbers, and the conclusions will remain the same. First of all, lifespans are getting longer. The average lifespan in Sri Lanka today is more than 75 years. Among the SAARC countries, it is one of the highest. And it will surprise many people to know that in 1960, it was not even 70, right? So people are living longer, and not only living longer, but they are also living healthier. And this has been made possible because of the country's development in making healthcare accessible to all, and the social programs that have made, the access to healthcare almost universal. Even though people would still say that hospitals can be better and doctors can be better, and so on and so forth. But the proof is in longer lifespans. On the other hand, retirement age in Sri Lanka, as in many other countries, remains rooted in the past. There is a legacy in the retirement system. I have friends in the Sri Lankan banking system who retire at 55. As the saying goes, 60 is the new 40, right? So with people living longer and people living healthier lives, at 55, most people are at their peak. But if you think Sri Lanka is alone in that, it's not correct. Even in countries like China, women retire at 55, men at 60, and I don't know why that difference is there in gender, but there you have it. So people are now looking at retirement at 55, and maybe a lifespan, the average lifespan, if it is 75, people who are from a better socio-economic background, people who have access to even better healthcare, people who are more educated are likely to live longer. So typically, people are looking at another 35 years after retirement, and most of it in very good health. So the nub of it all is that people are looking for longer working life. I know that some of you who are here are probably at the starting post, but I think this is the time to think about these things and prepare yourself. And maybe some of you are not at the starting post. You have run the race a little bit longer, but no matter who you are, these facts remain as the realities of the emerging demography. So longer lifespans, retirements, that are rooted in the past, and therefore a search for a longer working life. But on the other side, what is happening is people's skills and knowledges are getting out of date very fast. Okay. There was a time, like I remember my father, he took a bachelor's degree when he was 21. So he studied chemistry in college. And then he entered the paper industry where he worked for 40 years in the same company. He never went for any training in the organization. He never studied further beyond his bachelor's degree. But he had this job, and there was absolutely no insecurity about this job. He got paid well. He could raise his children well, and provide for his family well, and so on, and save too. So if you look at people, who are born in the 30s or 40s, they had one wave of education, if you like. If at all, there are many people in my father's generation who didn't even go through that degree. They just went to job straight after school. But if you take my father as an example, he went through a wave. Now, why exactly do I call this a wave? I'll come to it in a bit. But to give you a peep into what I'm thinking about, it's like this. When we go through education in school, it's a lot of fun. It's games, it's friendship, it's relaxed. In all of this, there is absolutely no concern about what to do for a living. You know, so the parents of the children are definitely worrying their heads off about, will my child be good in mathematics? Will my child be good in humanities? What will he or she become when they grow up? A doctor, an engineer, chartered accountant, whatever. The child himself or the child herself has absolutely no concern about these things. It's a pure joy. So it's like paddling in a lake or a swimming pool. You just lie back, relax, absorb what you can, do your best. And of course, there are parents and well-wishers, who are pushing you to do better. But by and large, children tend to have a good time. It is when you step into the college environment, the first wave hits you, as it were. It's like you are on the sort of paddling on the sea, and everything looks nice and cozy, and you are going through your school education, and come college, immediately there is an urgency, right? And this is why I call it a wave, because you have to ride this. You have to ride this and get out safely on the other side. Whatever degree you get must lead you to a good job, right? The story of my father's generation and people like him was that you just needed to ride one wave. So you rode one wave, you got into a job, you worked there for 40 years, and you retired with a pension, a house, a decent bit of saving, and a few children who were nicely brought up. This I call the traditional job. And many of these are disappearing. For those of you who are interested, I recommend websites which talk about this extensively. This is called the future of work, or FOW. The future of work is very, very grim. Complete jobs are disappearing now. Complete categories of jobs are disappearing. If I if you are advising your children to become a librarian or something, I would recommend that you think about it very, very carefully. Okay. So many traditional jobs are disappearing as skills and knowledge are getting out of date very fast, right? So that means simply the first wave will not take you ashore. The shore being, the ride through the career and a safe landing at the end of it all, with all the material needs nicely taken care of. Now, there are people at 40, in today's context, they feel this need very acutely. And my forecast is that in the next 10, 15 years, people in their 30s will start to feel this. So basically, if you are somebody who is 20 years old and you are now entering into some kind of a degree, okay, keep your eyes open. This is not going to serve you for life, okay? You cannot surf one wave and get to shore. Okay, so this is, I think, after many, many years in academia and close working with organizations, I can tell you this with all confidence. The investment that you make in your education today, in your early 20s, will last you for not more than 10 years. The shelf life is going to be very, very short, right? And this, of course, puts people in a bit of a panic, in the sense, what am I going to do, right? So, what do people usually do? I'm now looking at people who are in their late 30s or 40s. People say, okay, let's hope for the best and carry on, or let's launch a learning program. Let's learn some things online. Let's discuss with friends and family, what to do, or seek expert counseling, or maybe the government is going to help out. And now, why do I say this? Even as we speak, Singapore government has launched a very large program to what they call as to reskilling, right? Basically, they want people to get new skills, new knowledge, and therefore, yesterday's librarian is today's waiter, and so on and so forth, right? So if you are looking for a very clear answer, that now that you are entering some career in a large, your education program in a large institute, if you're thinking, what should I do? I would say seek information, counseling, help from all sides, and basically you need, all the advice, all the guidance, all the information you can get in order to make the choices that you're making, and also tune into the government, about where the future jobs are going to be. Tune into broad trends, trying to understand what is the future of work and what kind of jobs are disappearing. Discuss with friends and family and so on. So it's not about getting a branded degree. That doesn't help. Okay. So educational institutions, let us say, face it, they don't have the same clarity, as we would hope that they would do. So often, educational institutions launch one program, then they launch another program. Private institutions are much better at experimenting than a public institution, because they have a lot more flexibility in decision making. They can launch programs very quickly. I'm aware of private universities in Sri Lanka, which have been very quick to launch programs like, healthcare technologies, right? With a very quick and job market to get into. But our traditional universities, of which I have been a part for many years, believe that they can continue with business as usual, and that may not work for very long. But then again, as long as the funding from the government keeps coming, of course, things can keep moving at this pace. But basically, educational institutions are here to serve you, me, our children, and so on. And so, as long as they provide education that can help people walk into jobs and build careers, they are relevant and all right. Otherwise, their relevance is going to be brought to question, and people have to make choices that are not necessarily based on how old an institution is or what the brand is, but also about how best they can move into a career. So institutions are of many type, and some learn to listen and adapt, but that is not the majority. What are your employers doing? Now, this is a very, very interesting thing. My uh, first observation is, if you look at the banking sector in Sri Lanka, something that I'm familiar with, assets have grown, revenues have grown, profits have grown, headcount has not grown. Okay, headcounts have not grown. So what is basically happening is that there is not a whole lot of recruitment going on. Okay, this applies to banks also. In many public sector organizations, there's not a whole lot of recruitment going on, and we think, okay, no recruitment this year, maybe there is some bureaucratic problem, recruitment is going to happen next year, but that's not the case. So if you, I give you the banks as an example, right? A typical branch in a bank has about 6 people. Okay, and if a bank has, let us say, 1,000 branches, that will employ 6,000 people. But let's say if a bank says that, look, with the emerging technologies and all that, I don't need to open new branches. In fact, I'm going to even close down existing branches or remodel or reorganize existing branches. Then they say, oh, I don't need so much stuff, right? So as someone who is familiar with the budgeting of some banks in Sri Lanka, this is the prevalent mantra, that grow assets, grow profits, grow revenues, but don't increase headcounts. Okay. So how is that going to affect you as a new entrant into the education field or an existing employee trying to prepare your children for this new world? Basically, the thing is that the traditional roles, that banks and branches had, your tellers and clerks and assistant managers, etc., they may disappear, but there are other new roles opening up. Okay. And either you understand them yourself or the education institute you align yourself with understand this. But a general, what I call as a vanilla degree, which will serve as the paper that provides entry to certain stable or seemingly stable jobs, that will no longer be an insurance for future. Organizations are offering severance. I mean, I think maybe less so in Sri Lanka, but in other geographies that I'm familiar with, this is very, very common now. I mean, one of the most talked about is the software industry in India. A terrible phenomena. People got recruited about 10 years, 15 years back for their coding skills. They were excellent programmers, got good degrees from college, and then they became managers. So as managers, what they started to do was manage projects, and manage people, manage teams, manage relationships with clients, and so on and so forth. But over time, the need for this cadre of people became less and less, as communications improved, collaborative tools, started getting invented by technologies, etc. The need for these people. So these are called the middle layer. And middle layer employees in software organizations, these are some of the biggest employers, like some of the big software companies employ more than 100,000, 150,000 people. Each year, they lay off about 10,000, 15,000 people. Okay. And what is the reason? Basically, they say that, oh, what you know is not useful for me. Now, who are these people? They are typically in their late 30s and 40s and so on. And I know many of them. Some of them have been my students, etc. Now they face a dilemma. What exactly can they do now, right? So when they apply for another job in another software company, that software company also has the same response, to their profile, right? So they say, okay, I have to reinvent myself. So what I'm leading to now is that these employees, these kind of people, who are being offered a severance and so on, they have to do something now to launch a second career. And there are some very, very interesting examples of how people are coming out of this. I also, have questions for the organization. There are some evolved organizations who ask themselves about their obligations. Is it okay for me as an employer to simply tell my employee, okay, this is the end of the story. Thank you very much. Here is your severance pay. And I have fulfilled my legal obligations and all the very best. Now that I think is not being socially responsible, right? So employers also have to ask, what are they doing in order to reskill and help people reinvent themselves? And that is not happening to a great degree. So what I believe is that some companies, the evolved companies, the enlightened companies, are making investments to build these managers' capabilities, giving them pointers, giving the managers pointers that the future is not so bright if you are where you are, and so I'm willing to invest in you, but you also extend your hand so that together we can continue your career in this organization. So there is an intersection. Individuals need longer work life, as I said at the beginning. Education institutions need to become more relevant, and organizations need to be ready to invest in building capabilities of their senior workforce. Okay. Now here, in the last 10, 15 years, if you see in Sri Lanka also, there has been a fantastic growth in what I call as the master degree. And in the master degree is the the top of the list is the MBA. And this I call the second wave. So basically, a student who has done a bachelor's in engineering or bachelor's in economics or bachelor's in physics takes up his job, and then after 10 years or so, realizes that, going to senior management positions requires another wave, right? And so the second wave is the typical masters, of which MBA is the most important one. I have heard of very few people who go for a master's in engineering or a master's in science as a part of their second wave. Some of them go for a master's in computer science or something like that as a part of the second wave. But most people who need that second push, to get to the shore, they have chosen the MBA route, right? And there are many, many institutions, both local institutions and also private institutions operating in collaboration with overseas universities that have worked to provide this second wave. So this is what the picture looks like. I mean, school learning is fun, okay, and I don't think of it as a push. Uh, Except for the first day to school. I don't know if any of you remember it. I don't remember it. My parents tell me that I was not very cooperative and I wanted to come home. But they were shocked that the second day I was not willing to leave school. And that is probably the experience for most of you. School learning is fun. Post school learning is for work. Okay, this is the reality. Of course, we read for pleasure. We learn about astrology. We learn about astronomy. We learn about numismatics and so on. But those are what we classify as hobbies. But basically, much of the post-school learning is for getting a job and thriving in the job. So if your first wave was at 20 and your second wave is around 30, 35, and I think 35 is not correct. I think it's more like 30. My friends in Sri Lanka say that the second wave happens after they have their first child. So after the first child, go for the masters or the MBA and get it done, before the second child comes. So the third wave. Now, what exactly do I mean by the third wave and what am I predicting there? All I'm saying is that, if you got your bachelor's and if you got your master's, that may still not be enough. You are going to need another push to help you cross the line or get to the shore, as it were. Okay. So from where I'm sitting, I'm seeing this third wave happening, right? So Asian Institute of Technology is a center for higher learning. Dr. Rohanta is an alumnus, and AIT is very proud of having Dr. Rohanta as an alumnus of AIT. And in some way, Dr. Rohanta will tell you about this third wave. I think he is a part of the third wave. Now we are looking at mature learners, right? Who want a contemporary curriculum. That means, something that feeds their appetite for knowledge about things that they are hearing and going on in the environment. I suddenly hear about artificial intelligence. I hear about data science. I hear about machine learning and so on and so forth. I want this to feature in a curriculum so that I can learn something about it. If not how to actually do it, at least be able to use the outputs that come out of this. But then when you're in the third wave, the people are expecting, creative and flexible modes in delivery. They don't want to give up their jobs and go sit in a classroom for a couple of years. And they're looking for organization support and they want to learn at a reasonable cost. And this is where innovation from educational institutions becomes very, very important. That means we are looking at people who want to be students, much later in life, uh, and not because they think of it as a luxury, another paper to be had. This is become a survival issue, right? This has become a survival issue. I have to continue to be relevant to my organization and keep my job. And so, if an educational institution can come up with something like this, that serves this mature learner, fantastic, right? And that is what the search is for. And therefore, we have launched something which I will share with you later. But let me stop here and leave this picture on the board as something that conveys the basic message of what I have been talking about. That means 1 degree, 2 degree, and maybe 3 degrees. And if you ask me why these degrees, the answer is very, very simple. Unstructured, piece by piece learning, bits and pieces of knowledge from here and there, that is not going to help you build a structured frame, in which you can operate and do your job, right? So you need the discipline of an institution, you need the discipline of a degree, you need the discipline of colleagues and other learners around you, you need the discipline of exams. And once you come out at the end, at least you know that you have acquired some knowledge and you can demonstrate that to the others around you. So this is basically it. Uh, Whether you are starting out or you have been in a career for a while, uh, my view, from where I am right now, is simply that uh, once is not enough, twice is also not enough. It's got to be at least three, and probably, it may require another round. If people are looking for even longer careers than before, right? So on that note, let me stop, and it'll be interesting to go through the discussions and share with you my thoughts on any questions that you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Venkatesh, and I think it was fantastic. I mean, you always stimulated us at the classroom. I remember at AIT, coming out with some um, fantastic jewels every day. And I saw it again today. I never thought about this whole concept of the third wave, and you put it so aptly. It makes me really wonder the importance of, you define to us this whole concept of the importance of networking, an institution coming where the institution drives this learning process. Sometimes we never think about it. We think that we got our masters, or we have got our first degree, and we go for training once in about 2 week, 2 year, once a year. We go on a training program. We are sent around the world for some program, and we think when we come back, we are equipped. But then what you say is that there has to be some kind of an institution support mechanism that actually gets you to reskill, and if you don't do that, you cannot be optimum in the corporate world. So I think it's fantastic. You really got us to teach about the essence. uh, Doctor, when I wanted to invite you, the logic behind you coming in today was that we have had 16 speakers who are all chief executive officers and chairmen and managing directors of companies, and they were explaining how they're grappling with the current entity in terms of how they're going to make it kind of competitive, and how this whole pandemic has changed the way that people tend to look at things, because the consumer has changed. And but what you just now shared with us was really fantastic. That you need to have institution support, and that's why, once you finish your degree, you got to do your masters with institution support. so that it engraves some kind of a behavioral change. And you're saying that there cannot be just second wave, but you need to have a third wave. So thank you very much, Dr. Venkatesh. And I mean, you continue to give these fantastic nuggets that makes us think. And I suppose that's why you sit in one of the top premier universities around the world. So the first question, Dr. Venkatesh, is what are the key challenges that companies are facing in East Asia due to the pandemic?
Oh, let me uh, see. I take a view from the human capital angle. Okay, so there must be multiple challenges. People are talking about disruption in supply chain, reducing demand, and so on and so forth. I look at it from the human capital angle. Now, let's say there is a factory, because of the pandemic, or a hotel, a hotel, because of the pandemic, it is down, or an airline, the business is down. Now, what exactly happens to the people in these organizations, right? So they are simply let go, and that has been happening very quietly, and unfortunately, when something becomes commonplace, we also become numb to it, and there is not a whole lot of newspaper coverage and so on and so forth of these things, right? So people are losing jobs. Now, the impact of this is going to be something like this. When demand does come back, will these people be available, or will organizations will have to recruit and train again and spend a bunch of money in doing that? But the people who have been let go, where do they fit and what will they do? Uh, uh, that remains, so there is a very small government support that, some countries are providing, etc. But, in my view, even though the government makes it look like a big budget, on a per head basis, this is a very, very small amount. Okay? So the major impact, in my view, of the pandemic has been very clear loss of livelihoods. Very clear loss of livelihoods. We, by and large, countries in this part of the world have followed a lockdown model, and there are examples of countries in Northern Europe, like Sweden, etc., which did not do the lockdown, and countries that have followed lockdown have seen severe loss of livelihood. And the impact of this will be felt in years to come. I think people are still feeding on their savings and so on. But going forward, with longer lifespans and very long periods of joblessness, there will be long-term impact on the economy.
So, how have you, I mean, since you had the MBA program at AIT, I mean, what are the key changes that you all have done to the product because of this kind of market dynamics?
Actually, we have launched nearly 5 new products, in the last 12 months. Let's look at it this way. When the pandemic hit, AIT was one of the worst hit institutions, because all our students come or most of our students come from overseas. So we are an international university. Other universities in Thailand are local universities catering to the demands of Thai people. But for us, a bulk of the students are coming from abroad. And with the travel restrictions and non-availability of flights and so on and so forth, these students stopped coming. They could not come. They were offered admission, but they could not come. So the issue then was how to carry on. So AIT launched a sort of initiative called Without Missing a Beat. Without missing a beat. So the president was very clear, we have to carry on as if it's business as usual. So we made an investment in 18 hybrid classrooms. A hybrid classroom is one in which you teach in the classroom. Some students are sitting and learning with you in the class, and there are many others who are taking the class on Zoom or some video service. I was actually the first faculty to teach in a hybrid classroom. And it required a lot of reskilling, and I had to go through some training. Plus, I had to adjust my mind to doing that. As a result of experimenting with this hybrid and seeing that it worked, and seeing that many students who received it on Zoom did not feel any disadvantage, we said, why not extend this into new product offerings? So I'll give you some new product offerings that have come up now. One is called a Flex Masters. Okay, what is a Flex Master? Now we say that, look, you want to start a master's degree, but you don't have time to finish it in 2 years. Or maybe, you're not sure about what subjects you want to take. So you want to take a few subjects now, and a couple of years down the line, you want to take some more subjects. That is a Flex Masters. Take what subjects you want and finish when you like. I put it very simply. There are some rules that apply. Then we launched what is called as a professional masters. I'm going to share with you through the chat box the brochures for these professional masters. We said, oh, fantastic opportunity. Now, earlier, only students who could quit their jobs and come to AIT could study in AIT. Not anymore. With the Zoom and the attendant infrastructure, and most importantly, the acceptance of these delivery media by the students, meant that I can take bankers in Sri Lanka, I can admit bankers in Bangladesh and Nepal and India and Vietnam, and they are all in the same classroom virtually. And we will bring them together at the end for their final thesis presentation to the AIT campus, where they will be getting a degree. So we have willy-nilly, internationalized the program. Then we have launched what is known as a university capacity building program, right? Now we found that there are many universities where the students, the teachers don't have a PhD, and they look to AIT for getting a PhD. We said, okay. And then the universities say, oh, we cannot release these people from the job. We say, no problem. We are now experts in hybrid teaching. We are now experts in Zoom teaching. Your teachers can remain there and work on their PhD. And when you give them leave, they can come and meet the advisors here. If not, they can even defend their thesis online. Okay? So what started out as a crisis has actually turned out to be an opportunity to expand our reach, and also provide service to students whom we could not cater to before, because of some of the restrictions, like you have to be on campus and so on and so forth. So has AIT coped? What I would say is we took one step, and then that led to another, and so on. And so when we look back at the footprints on the sands, it looks like we had a strategy, and maybe we did, but it's been an exciting way forward.
Oh, that's fantastic, Doctor. Yeah, I mean, it's nice to study online, but I think the campus at AIT is so beautiful, and that experience, I think, is something that people have to really kind of touch and feel to really get the real footprint of the brand.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I agree with you. It's only, what we are saying is, if you can't come, we have an option. If you can come, please come.
Doc, when do you think East Asia might move to a pre-pandemic situation?
This is, I think East Asia is very big, I mean, if you think China, they're probably on the course already. But for many other countries, it's still early days to say. But if by pre-pandemic we mean free travel, unrestricted travel, tourism as normal, uh, I would say another year and a half at least, you know, because we don't even have any preliminary plans on how to normalize travel. And even if the procedures are put in place, it's not clear how many people will take it up.
Uh, Doctor, how is it? What is your advice to a youngster who is going to study for the masters? Since you studied, I mean, you taught many of us in Sri Lanka actually. What advice would you give to a youngster who wants to study a masters in Sri Lanka?
Masters or
Yeah,
an
MBA.
MBA.
Yes.
Uh, I would say that look at the curriculum very carefully now. You know, MBA is a name of a degree, but not all MBAs are the same. And the curriculum is the one that makes the difference. Uh, and that also makes you job ready. So my first suggestion is more than the brand, more than the name, look at the curriculum and how it can lead to jobs. The second thing I would say is in the curriculum, find out how much opportunity is there for industry interaction. Many of the innovative curriculum now are building very strong industry interactions, whether it is through student projects, consulting clubs, internships, and so on and so forth. MBA is more than any degree job oriented, and therefore, uh, you may study physics or mathematics, completely in the classroom in the company of your teacher and colleagues. For MBA, the more you learn from practicing managers outside, the better are your chances of getting a job and getting mentored and so on and so forth. The third thing I would say is look for a curriculum that balances well between so-called technical skills and the soft skills. Soft skills are hugely underestimated. Even as we speak, there is a university that is consulting me and a colleague about how to review their curriculum so that the soft skills part of it is strengthened. And for many of you, when you walk into an organization, it will be a shock to find. I'm talking to the young MBA aspirants. It will be a shock to find that the technical things that you learn matter not as much as your ability to relate to people, manage tricky political situations, and know how to deal with bosses, peers, colleagues, etc. So the curriculum should offer some, grounding in the soft skills, so that you are sort of mature, emotionally, behaviorally when you enter into a job. So go through the curriculum carefully. What will you learn? How will you learn? Will you meet companies? Will you meet managers? Many MBAs now have a lot of opportunities to interact with industry leaders. The curriculum should build that into the.
Thank you, Doc. In fact, at the Staffordshire MBA, which has been run at APIT at the Asia Pacific, you, something that we give is that exposure of meeting all the top CEOs and
Right.
engaging them, and I mean it's so important also, I think, in terms of the curriculum, the kind of the depth that you would get, because that's what actually drives you, that second and the third learning. Doctor, I mean, since you have worked in consultancy companies right across Sri Lanka, what do you think is, in the given the pandemic, what kind of key areas should a Sri Lankan company focus on?
It's difficult to say. I think since the pandemic started, I have had less and less opportunities to interact with my Sri Lankan friends compared to before. In 2019, I made 8 trips to Sri Lanka, and each trip was on an average about 4 days. And each evening was, spent meeting friends like you and talking about what is going on. And that was my education. That is where I picked up things. In the last year and a quarter, I have not had that opportunity. So uh, I'm a little bit disadvantaged that way.
Doc, how important is the dissertation to a youngster who is doing an MBA? Because we find that a lot of people give emphasis to the initial subject curriculum, but they sometimes get stranded when it comes to the dissertation, or they don't give that full input because it needs a new set of skill set.
Right.
How, how do you define a dissertation and the importance of it to a youngster who is doing a master's program?
I think, for my students in AIT, when they come to me and they want to do a dissertation and they are searching for a topic, I give 3 criteria. One is, how does it help your positioning? Let's say, I'm interested in a career in branding. Then my dissertation should show this interest in branding. It must be about branding, and I must show that I have read about branding, I have seen practices, I have talked to practitioners. I must demonstrate my keenness about this field. So the first criteria is it should help you position and brand yourself in the job market. The second criteria is it must be something that is doable. Don't take a huge problem and then come down under the weight of it. If you have 3 months, see what can be done in 3 months. Then life becomes easy. If you bite off a little bit more than that, then it becomes stressful. You cannot finish it, and then you feel uncomfortable, and so on and so forth. The third thing is you must have an advisor who knows the subject. Otherwise, the power relationship is very unfair. So the advisor will make the student run around, even though the advisor himself or herself doesn't know the subject very well, right? So if the student has an advisor who knows the subject, then the enthusiasm level can remain high through the whole process. So use it to brand yourself. Cut the suit according to the cloth available. Don't bite off more than you can chew, and have a knowledgeable advisor. Then it can become an enjoyable process, and it can also be a productive process, in leading to a good job and so on.
Doctor, that was actually fantastic, Doctor. I mean, I have heard so many people giving different definitions of the importance of a dissertation, but what you said is so spot on. You have to select a topic which actually brands you, because then you become a master of it, and then you start talking about it, and then you will maybe publish, and you might write about it to the paper, and that's what actually builds the equity of the brand. And I really like your simplicity of your answer, but how clear it is. I mean, it's thank you very much. Doctor, is there some kind of a collaboration that I mean, maybe since we are also Asia Pacific, a global entity, and of course AIT is way bigger than us. Is there some kind of a collaboration that our postgraduate students, the master's students, could do with AIT, Dr. Venkatesh?
I mean, AIT is all about collaborations. As you know, We have collaborations with many universities around the world, and and the scope of the collaboration is different with different universities. So there is, in fact, a dedicated office for doing this. But we can also start by discussing with the Dean of School of Management. I can bring him into the loop, and we start with some preliminary ideas on the areas in which we want to collaborate, and then take it from there. But AIT thrives on collaborations, and with your involvement in APIIT, that makes it that much easier. You're also now officially a mentor of students in SOM, right?
Yeah.
So you have that vantage position from which you can initiate this collaboration, and we will see how it goes from there. Once you get started.
Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Venkatesh. Indeed, that brings us to an end of this discussion today. On behalf of Rapid Family and students, let me thank you wholeheartedly for this opportunity that is given and sharing the thoughts, and most importantly, letting our postgraduate students know where direction is coming and exactly where to find their motive and especially passion. So indeed, it really, really collaborates with our purpose of giving them the opportunity to learn from this expertise. So that brings us to an end. And on behalf of APIT again, while I thank you for all your contributions, we wish you all the very best for you to continue in whatever the profession, of course, more than profession, the service that you're doing. Thank you so much and wish you all the very best. So with that, we come to the end of our webinar for the day today. And any last thoughts to be added, Dr. Rohanta?
Yes, I'm just coming in. Sorry, Dr. Venkatesh.
No problem.
The doc, yeah, thank you very much, Doctor. I mean, it's actually, um, I'm so glad that uh, I was able to again touch base with you. Maybe not because uh, of the bonding that we have, but I think it's more to do with how so simple your answers are, but so much of depth which you have. It's actually amazing. Uh, Doc, one last question. If somebody is now finished the masters and then done about maybe a few years of work and then wants to do a doctorate,
Mhm.
what is your advice, Dr. Venkatesh?
My first advice is ask why. Why do you want to do the doctorate? Because unlike a master's, a doctorate doesn't have that much ability to propel your career. So if people want to jump to academics, it is one thing. Then the other possibility is a deep love for the subject and a need to explore and intellectually challenge yourself. That is another thing. Or maybe there are certain spheres of work, such as with the government, etc., where a doctorate is an asset to have. But I would say that in all of these cases, explore the motivation very, very carefully. Second is have a dialogue with somebody who has gone through it. Sometimes a doctorate can turn out to be a long and painful process, and then you look back and say, "Why did I start it?" But then, the peculiar thing is that people don't want to drop it. Because if you drop it, you feel uncomfortable for the rest of your life that I didn't finish what I started. And so I know people who are stuck in it, for 10 years and so on. And that can become, that can interfere with your life in general. So, you talk to others about the whole experience. And third is choose the institution carefully. Because you have one chance to be a doctor, and so it has to be from a place that is well recognized and where the whole processes are so strong that when people say, Rohanta is a doctor from AIT, that means something. He has gone through a very rigorous process. So this is not something you pick up in the supermarket or something. So choice of institution is very important. So motivation, be very clear in your mind, and if you're married, ask your spouse first whether you want to go for a doctorate or not, right? So motivation is very, very important to understand. And, the other things will automatically follow. But, doctorate, it is a long process. So talk to other people with experience and choose the institution very carefully. It can be a pleasurable process, but not always.
Yeah, doctor, I think you're so spot on again. When I reflect back, um, you know, my parents are planters, tea planters. So my topic was on the tea plantation industry and how you can make the regional plantation companies um, sustainable, because they just privatized it. So that kind of excited me to do the doctorate. And second, you so very rightly said, during that time, I served the tea board, and whatever I did in my research was useful for the tea board. And today, as we speak, uh, I find that the regional plantation companies have gone and put a case against the government because there are some recommendations that we made uh, from the tea board. It was not used, and you see this the need for, I think, more research to be done.
Right.
And third, of course, Dr. Venkatesh, what you very rightly said is the institution that gives you that structural approach of thinking. My doctorate took me like 6 years, 6.5, 7 years. But when I look back, I think it's the best thing that has happened in my life. It was very tough. It was very, very torturous. And I remember sometimes meeting at 8 o'clock in the night in Sri Lanka just before you fly out, discussing how do I move forward. But today, when the dean president asked me, can you be a mentor to our youngsters? There was 21 of us from all over the world who said we are going to come in and be a mentor. And I mean, 3 students, I think, have got their doctorate from AIT from a batch of about 34, which shows that the kind of rigor that you have to go through.
Sure.
But we see, Dr. Venkatesh, we are proud of AIT because when we look at our own contribution in our organizations, we see that cutting edge coming out. And I think, people like us are absolutely so thankful to the likes of you who have given us that guidance. And we continue this relationship. And I suppose it's that relationship that continues us to engage with each other. Uh, uh, Thank you very much, Dr. Venkatesh, for being our host, being our speaker today and our guest. It's actually an honor for me to host you, sir. And we really like to collaborate, and we will maybe, I don't know, right now the discussions are that we should have a research conference between AIT and APIT. And I don't know, maybe we can host it in um, a beautiful location in Thailand, or whether we could do it in Sri Lanka. I mean, maybe we could think through, and maybe also certain other collaborations will work. I will sit with you, Dr. Venkatesh,
Certainly.
and I would really like to have you back in Sri Lanka as quickly as possible.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
And the bankers are actually waiting for you much eagerly. So, Kaushali, over to you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Indeed, Dr. Venkatesh, let me again thank you for the time and the knowledge that is shared. And as Dr. Rohantha said, we are eagerly waiting to meet you physically and along with our students back in Colombo. So until then, take good care. And this brings us, as I said, to another end of one of the sessions in our series. And we would like to meet you back again in another webinar. Until then, good night from our end.
Thank you
Have
so
a
much.
pleasant evening.
Yeah, Rohantha, I will send you an email now. So have a look and see if you can work on it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Venkatesh. I will appreciate.
Thank you.
God bless. Bye.